In this year's election, people in Boston will vote for mayor and city council, but the election is also a conversation about the state of the city, and that certainly applies to candidates for mayor. After promising 4 years ago to make headway on some of Boston's persistent challenges, our guest is running for re-election to his second term in the mayor's office. We'd like to welcome Marty Walsh. Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks. Great to be here today.
First of all, I want to ask you about something that you were involved in today. This is the release of Boston's resiliency plan. This is, in a way, about one of Boston's persistent problems, the socio-racial gaps. Talk about what you're going to be doing through that.
Yeah, what this plan does lay out a blueprint a little bit about how we deal with some of the conversations around race and racism, and actually dealing with race and racism in different aspects. And it kind of wraps in with Imagine Boston 2030, the master plan which we released on Tuesday, of looking at the future of the city of Boston and looking at in a lot of these different areas through the racial equity lens, and see how we improve life across the city. We have incidents like what happened at Fenway Park a couple weeks ago that we ignore it, or we don't deal with it, or we kind of address it for a short period of time, hope it goes away, then it goes away, and hopefully it doesn't happen again. And this is something that in the campaign for mayor, when I ran in 2013, that somebody asked me a question about race and what I thought that where race was in Boston, and I kind of stumbled on the answer because it's a very uncomfortable conversation, and realized at that point we have to dive deeper into having race dialogues, race discussions, and this plan actually looks at race in a very different way.
Well, for the past few decades, really, people in Boston have also been talking about this a lot in connection with jobs. Now, whether it's jobs in the city payroll or jobs that the city generates,
housing,
what
jobs,
would you say?
It's housing, jobs. It's everything we do at life. It's education. It's systemic racism that we have here. It's a lot of different pieces, and this is in other parts of the country as well, but we are dealing with it. It's the first time we've ever released a resiliency report dealing with race in the city. People said to me, why do you even go there? Because it's a no-win. It's not something that you can solve. No, I don't solve it. It's not about Marty Walsh. It's about the city working together to move our agendas forward and move our city forward, and it will take probably a decade to truly get there, but we can look back on time and say, geez, Boston addressed this issue, we started to address this issue in 2017, and really has done an incredible job moving forward. If we don't, we're still going to have incidences like that happen at Fenway Park, and people are going to conjure up the bad feelings of their experience here in the city of Boston, that it was racist and very bad, and the image of Boston around the country will stay the same.
Now, we've heard about city departments, especially under civil service, where it's hard to close the racial gap very quickly, but if you look at whether it's city jobs or jobs that the city encourages in the neighborhoods, even into contracting in the private sector, what would you point to as a place where you can really say, I've made some headway on this?
Hiring. I mean, in the city of Boston. I mean, if you look at the numbers of people, we have 18,000 employees in the city of Boston. Obviously, when a new mayor comes in, you don't get to hire 18,000 new employees. You have unions and you have people, career public servants. We've hired 44% of the people hired under the Walsh administration have been people of color. We've diversified the command staff of the police department. We've created a program to hire new cadets, of which 75% of those cadets were people of color, kids of color. My cabinet is 50% people of color. We're making tremendous gains there. We've made some tremendous gains in the school department in hiring, changing our hiring policy to hire earlier in the process rather than later. We have a court order to have 25% people of color as teachers in the Boston Public Schools. It's happened before I was mayor. We shouldn't need a court order to understand the importance of having people of color teaching our kids. We moved that date up of hiring in April so we can hire more teachers of color. So we've made some significant gains there. When it comes to the jobs on the private side, the Boston jobs policy, we raised the numbers. When I became mayor, it was 50% Boston residents, 25% people of color, and 10% women. I've moved those numbers to 51% Boston residents, 40% people of color, and 12% women. The reason why the number for women is so small is that we're working to try to build up the capacity there. So I think we've made some great gains. We have an Office of Diversity in the city of Boston now, which wasn't there before. We have one in the police department and fire department. So we're constantly working on ways of implementation and making our city and our government more inclusive.
This is BNN News, and we're talking with Boston Mayor Marty Walsh. Mr. Mayor, in housing, there's still all this talk about the cost of buying property, paying the rent. People see all those tall new buildings downtown, so there are a lot of units being created, but what about relieving the problem
We've set a record the last 3 years in our city of building low-income housing, more than any other period in the history of our city. We have about 8,200 units of housing, low-income, moderate-income housing, that's either complete in the pipeline under construction right now in the city of Boston. We have been able to change the inclusionary development. That's the off-site affordability of units that were built in these high-end housing. We raised that to 18%. We've raised about $70 million from that. We've also invested in the last 3 years over $100 million, city investment, IDP, and other money, $100 million into building affordable housing. We were able to pass the Community Preservation Act, which is going to help us as we move forward here and putting more money into low-income housing. So we're moving forward on low-income housing, and what we're doing, last year we saw a stabilization of 4% reduction in rents across the board. And people might say, well, it's not a lot of money. It's the first time in a decade that we've seen a reduction in rent. So we're constantly adding more supply. We have to add more supply on the market because, quite honestly, property is going. Every neighborhood of the city of Boston is deemed a hot neighborhood, and people are getting large amounts of money. And what's happening is people are seeing these opportunities to sell their home, make a lot of money, and move out. But yeah, when you move out, people want to come back into the city.
Earlier in the year, your administration supported the Stabilization Act proposed to the City Council. This would have additional protections for tenants, just cause eviction. It's been meeting some resistance. What's your take on where this is going?
Hopefully we can get it to the legislature so we can get it through the legislature. I mean, there's some aspects of that bill that we need to help us. I mean, but we also created the Office of Housing Stability, which we're working on people who get displaced. So we're doing what we can with the tools that are provided to us. But if we can get a few more tools and a few more opportunities, we'll be able to do even more to help people stay in their home. One of the aspects is if a house gets foreclosed on, let's say a three-family gets foreclosed on, we want to pass a law. The banks would have to keep the tenants in the home because it's not their fault. They pay the rent. They should be able to stay there. So we're working on aspects like that. So we're constantly thinking of new ideas on how to keep people in their homes to cut down on displacement, but also try and create more opportunities for living in our city.
Turning to public safety, violent crime in all categories is down, and yet the same statistics from the police department says shootings are up. Well, what's going on here?
I mean, they're up this year, and I think what's happened in the past is we've been so successful in bringing shootings down that we have a new high, meaning that we brought it down to almost an all-time low a couple of years ago, and that's the new norm, and we have to bring it back down to that point. And what's happened in the city, unfortunately, for some reason, over 4th of July weekend, and it's happened the last 4 years, there's always been an uptick in violence, an uptick in shootings for some reason, and we can't really figure out why, because there's a lot of resource out in the street, but we have to do more than that. And we've laid an unbelievable foundation down for the last 3 years with our Office of Public Safety. First of all, we never had an Office of Public Safety in the city of Boston. We have one today. We completely relied on our police department. We have increased the number of summer jobs every year since I've been mayor for our young people. Last year, we began a program that would give 13 and 14-year-olds the opportunity to work in our centers and pay them a stipend. They're not old enough to work formally in getting paid by the hour in our programs, and then some of them have aged out of the camp system. So we're paying those young people. We've expanded our after-school program and our summer learning program called Fifth Quarter. We've expanded that program. We launched a program the other day with the governor at the Roberts Playground in Dorchester to have more DCR support there. We're working on continuing keeping our young people busy. And I think that when you think about what's happened in the city, there's too many guns in the street. Now, you can't have a police state in the neighborhood. We don't want a police state in the neighborhood, the cops going up and just harassing every young person in the world, see if they have a gun. That's not going to happen in our city. So we're literally one person at a time trying to deal with the issue of violence. We have a 33% drop in arrests over the last 2.5 years. That's a big number. That's a good number. So when you think about our city, we're a safe city, but we have challenges in certain areas with certain groups of young people, and we have to make sure that we continue a diligent effort of trying to bring them into the fold so that they don't do something bad.
What about the rate on investigating shootings, especially non-fatals? These are difficult. But
no one talked about that before. The press never talked about it 2 years ago. It was like all the press talked about 2 years ago was solving the unsolved homicides. And then a reporter who used to write here in Boston is now writing in Virginia, does a tweet and says, I want to start investigating the non-fatal shootings or non-shooting. First of all, he wants to report. If we knew where the guns were, we wouldn't have the problem on the street. We have guns in the hands of kids, of young people, that are illegal guns. So we don't know who they are. We can't trace them back to anyone when we get a ballistic from it. You can't do it. So what we're doing is working on making sure, my number one priority is making sure our clearance rate for homicides gets to 100%. We want to make sure that when somebody loses a loved one, that they know who was responsible for that. I think that's important for us to make sure as a city that we do that. We're able to clear a couple yesterday. On the other side, yeah, the number's I think it's 4%. I mean, it's not going to be good. We're talking about illegal guns on the street. People are not, when I say people, not the community, people who have guns aren't going to explain to themselves, well, this is what happened. I got shot by this person. They're not going to talk about it.
Of course, another part of this is you try to have young people get into other directions, other opportunities. Yeah. Talk about Operation Exit. Operation Exit is a program that was started 2 years ago that we started partnering with the building trades and giving young people, gang involved, people with quarries, big quarries, I'm talking some small stuff, big stuff, an opportunity to get into the building trades. We've graduated 4 cycles now of this program. It's a partnership between YOU, it's a partner YOU Boston, it's a partnership with the building trades, all the different trades in the city of Boston. It's a partnership with the Boston Police Department, it's a partnership with our Office of Public Safety. Yesterday we had a graduation last night. It was an incredible graduation. 18 young men graduated. I'm proud of them all. And we get different people funding us. In this last couple of rounds, the Lewis Family Foundation is one, and the Kraft Family Foundation. Mr. Kraft has been very, very generous to this program in making sure that we keep these cycles going. Speaking of working in building trades, you've got some big plans for the Boston Public School buildings. Yes, we do. Build BPS. It's a master planning process we went through for the last couple of years, assessing all our buildings, and it's going to be $1 billion investment in our schools. We'll put aside $750 million from bonding ability. Hopefully we're going to be able to get $250 million from the School Building Authority. And what we're doing with the money is we're going to be, actually the community, and when I say the community, the parents and kids and the students and the teachers are going to be talking about what they want to see in their schools. And we're going to look at our school system and see what type of district we want to be. We have, right now in Boston, I think we have 125 school buildings. We have 22 different grade configurations. We have 22 different start times. There is money being wasted on the fact that we have 22 different start times and we have buses running all over the city half full, and we're working on a program now. It will not be ready for school year 17-18, but it will be ready for school year 18-19 on changing start times and being able to readjust some of the things and save some money on transportation and take that money and reinvest it back in the school. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you. Boston Mayor Marty Walsh. Still accountable, talk with a candidate for City Council in Roxbury's District 7.